mode.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your interest in joining this webinar. My name is Jaswin. I'm part of the BI and Analytics practice at YASH, and I will be walking you through this solution. Before we get into the slides, a few questions to think about as an organization. How do you handle your data quality? Is there some importance on how data is created, how accurate the data is, and so on? Does your organization have any data management requirements? If you're a company who is into expansion mode and then you have a lot of companies joining in, how do you harmonize the data across your organization? Do you have a centralized master data system to handle all data? Is there a process in place? As a global organization, again, how do you bring data together so that you have one global reporting environment? If you have thought about all these questions or something rings a bell, then DataOne might be a solution that you want to consider to improve your journey with data management and data quality. Let's talk about this particular graphic here. This is a nice visualization which represents information critical to the organization. But from the business point, this could lead to a few questions, like where do these numbers come from? Like, as these numbers consider all the relevant data sources that are in the organization? And look at net sales. Is this a business term that is consistent with our definition across the organization? How accurate and how current is this data? Is this like the latest data? Is it as of now? Is it yesterday? And can I trust these numbers to make decisions? Has all these different business rules been incorporated, taken care of before this number is presented to me? So things like these are big concern when it comes to critical decision making. What are the challenges that we face? Like, there are two types of users, IT and business users. And when it comes to data, there is always a conflict between the IT and business. One thing is, there is no common environment for the business users and IT to collaborate. Business defines the data, business defines the data requirements, IT builds it, and that's it. There's no way to measure and score the quality of data unless there is a process in place. No clear strategy, duplicate data, which is a very, very big issue when it comes to the data management. From the business users, when they go into the reporting, when they see the reports, they're not sure what the business definition. Sometimes it is too technical. Data sometimes is across systems and there's no ability to analyze data, bringing them together. Lack of visibility, where the data is coming from. Is this from my company in Mexico, or is it from my other plant in Dallas? I don't know. So with all that, what needs is a good data quality and data management process. And in this slide, I'm going to talk about what it takes in a typical data quality process, where the journey is set to take your current data, improve it, and load it into your system, which is used for reporting and transactions. So the process starts with an extraction, and then cleansing of data, transformation, validation, and loading. So extraction is bringing data from your source systems. This could apply when you are into a new company acquisition mode, or you want to extract data from your existing system and cleanse it and so on. So second part is cleansing of the data. So all the data extracted goes through a cycle of staging, and there is a profiling that we do where the data is checked for patterns, consistencies, and so on. A quality report is generated based on which the cleansing rules are defined. Okay, typical cleansing is address cleansing in terms of customers and vendors, data cleansing in terms of removing inconsistencies, removing duplicate data. And then once this is done, it's also about transformation of the records to ensure that they meet the quality, the business definitions that is set in the company, standardizing of the data. And once all these processes are done, finally the step to validate the data against the target system, check for formats, check for business rules, check for the mandatory information that are required, and finally loading it into the final production systems and monitoring the data loads. If you look at it, the first 4 blocks of extraction, cleansing, transformation, validation is about 85%, and then the loading is only 15%. So this is something that is missed out in many data projects where the time taken for the entire process is not considered. So what is DataOne? So this solution addresses or aims to support that 85% effort that is spent on how to do that efficiently. Typically, a lot of manual work goes into, and with DataOne as a solution, we are proposing a method and a set of processes that can improve this journey. So what is DataOne? So it's a collection of industry best practices and framework and the relevant tools, methods, and templates required to do this data migration and set up a centralized master data which is common across the organization and over the globe. As a solution, DataOne ensures clean and high quality data available for the BI needs, for rollouts and implementation projects quickly, on time, and with a lot of cost efficiency. So DataOne as a solution addresses 3 different areas: data migration, data quality management, and master data governance. So from the data migration perspective, it is to move data from your legacy systems or newly acquired systems into your central ERP or CRM systems, or your data warehouse, which forms your base for your reporting and analytics and predictive analytics and so on. And as a process of the migration, we also ensure data quality. And the second block is specifically the data quality management, which is to address the quality issues, setting the data according to the organization standards, business rules, and so on. And finally, setting up a master data governance process so that in future, to ensure that no more wrong data gets into the system, and there is a process when data is created, how data is put to rest. Well, like for example, when a material is not used anymore in the organization, how do we get rid of it from the system? So setting a process around this data governance is the final piece of the solution. So from an architecture perspective, there's a high-level architecture. So DataOne as a solution is capable of extracting data from legacy systems. It could be like systems like DB2 or older databases, mainframes, and it could be any database like SQL Server, Oracle, or in the form of flat files. The data is pulled into what we call as the DataOne engine, where the majority of the data cleansing and processing takes place, profiling of data, validations, extractions, conversions, enrichment, standardizations, and so on. And the business and IT team from your organization get to interact with the system to help define this process, help manage this process. So with the interaction with the business and IT and implementing the different business requirements, finally the data is cleansed and loaded into a centralized golden copy database, which becomes your master data repository for all your master data. And from there, the data gets loaded into target system. Now, one last feature is also, like I mentioned, the ability to extract data from your target system, pump it into the DataOne engine, and redo this entire cleansing process, load it back. Now, from a deployment perspective, we have 2 options. We have a software as a service model where we will own the entire data cleansing process, but we also have an option to implement it on-premise with different licensing needs. This is the data flow diagram for the process. So we start with the source systems and source files, do the extraction, okay, set up a staging area where the data gets loaded, and then profiling of data. We start looking into the data, looking into data patterns. Is the email, how is the email definition? Phone numbers, do they conform to the standards? How about the zip codes? Does every address record have the street number field, and so on? So based on the profiling, reports are generated which show the pattern of data across the organization, and these reports are sent to the business and IT team, who run through these reports and say, hey, this particular thing is not consistent with what we want. This could be a major problem. And then they go back, cleanse or fix the data in the source system or in the legacy database, and then load it back to the staging database, from where we start the next phase of the process, which is to transform the data, enrich and validate. So here data is taken through a rigorous cycle where every record is processed for accuracy, for conformity, and meeting the standards. And once the data is converted and stored in the database, conversions database, from there, another set of reports are generated, which are preload validation reports, which show the difference between the initial profiling reports and how much the quality of data has improved. So this is again validated by the business and IT team, approved before the data gets loaded finally into the golden repository. And from there, we will load the data to the target system, which could be an SAP system, a HANA system, or an enterprise data warehouse. And during the load, any records that fail into load are captured in the load fail reports, which are processed through this entire cycle again. So we do see, there is a value, a return on investment right away when the profiling starts. And we have seen this with our customers. Right from the time when data is profiled, you can see that how much of data issues are there, and you start seeing value right there. And then you also start seeing when the reports are delivered to the business and IT team, and they start fixing that, right? And finally, when the bigger chunk of the returns is when the data gets loaded into the final golden repository, when the data is clean and is more reliable for all the needs of the company. Now, when it comes to implementation, a right data approach is critical for a project success. So here are some facts. 30% of data migration projects run over budget. 41% of migration projects run over time, and there's a lot of projects run over budget and delay in execution. The reason being not following industry best practices, not implementing the right tool to do the process, and also the participation of IT and business, which is very, very critical for successful data migration, data management projects. So from data extraction preparation, like we saw before, 80 to 85% goes into just the cleansing part, which is usually neglected, and a lot of manual efforts are put in, which causes delay and these reasons. Now, how do we address it in DataOne? We have put predefined templates which accelerate the data mapping, predefined content for cleansing and transformation. Our solution has the codes and the processes which we have leveraged from our past experience that makes it faster. For the validation, all the rules are readily available for all the critical master data objects, and again, predefined data staging definitions are available, which makes it even faster. So with all this, we have seen, and it is proven that we reduce 15 to 25% effort in comparison to a similar ETL or data quality tool, which ensures that you have the right data at the right time. In a typical rollout project, availability of the organization data itself for the UAT and training purposes. A few benefits, like I mentioned, collaboration between the business and IT, improvement in the data quality. We target to get 95% accuracy at least by the time data quality process is done, and the rest 5 is something that gets addressed during the ongoing data governance process. A good understanding of data quality metrics through dashboards and scorecards, reduction in costs in overall management with the process and eventually bridging the gap between the IT and the business users. Here is an example of how DataOne can help. Okay, look at the sample customer master data. So here we have a customer called Margaret Smith, and you can see how the data is very unstructured. And what DataOne does is takes this record, breaks it into the different fields that are required from the customer master here, for example. So it adds a salutation, first name, last name, puts a title in the right place, and you can see the city names, state. These are populated from just the address that we have, from knowing that Future Electronics is a company that is in this address. A zip code, a proper 94 zip code is added. Email address is fixed, and provision to add the social security number and the data. So it gives a very good visibility of how the data transforms from what it was to what it is. Here is another example. When the same record is maintained across multiple systems, okay, so as a company you have different locations, and it's the same customer but with different ways of data entry. Again, the solution helps to bring all this data together, process them, merge them into a single record where it allocates the name, the social security number, and so on. So finally you get a clean master data which you can depend on. For the next few minutes, I'll quickly run through the process, though I said that DataOne is an engine which we will run through, and so this particular demo will show what goes inside from getting the data from your source systems to transformation and how it gets loaded into the systems. So I'm going to talk about the various steps that are involved internally. So the process starts with the source system, database tables and flat files which are uploaded into the DataOne engine, into the staging area. So first is, for example, here in this demo, I'm going to take this customer data. We have a raw data here, and you can see all the different highlighted areas. There's a lot of data missing. There's a lot of data that's like that has issues. Okay, like phone numbers are not formatted, country is not allotted in many places, emails missing, emails having spaces, and so on. So the first step, like I said, is we load it into the system. So it's filled into the staging database. As you can see, it's getting the database and as it is. The next step we do from there is start with the profiling. Now profiling, what is profiling? Profiling is the process of examining the data for the patterns. Right? So there are different types of profiling that we do. We do column, address, dependency, redundancy, and uniqueness. And each of this profiling gives a different perspective of data. Okay, like address profiling says when it looks into an address, it says it's a valid address. It looks into the address and say correctable, saying that okay, there is some information there using which we can fill the rest of the information and make it a correctable record. And sometimes it throws an invalid record where it says like this doesn't even look like an address, so we can start looking into that. So typically we do the column profiling, okay, where we look into the data. For example, here once you look into the customer details table that is loaded and you do column profiling, you are able to see that each columns what is happening. For example, here region, there's like 109% accurate percent of data there. Country, there's only 42% of data filled. And there's some post name and title. So you can see that it's not consistent. All the records are not filled. Like address line, there's 91% match. There's like 2% person in the address contribute. There's some of them are like they're not really addresses. They're pretty much person names, and some of them look like firm names and not really an address. So it breaks that out. Okay, it also brings out all the null records, which does not bring any value, which has to be manually looked into, and you can export them into an Excel or load it to a DB where the business can look into. So similarly, we look into the address, assign the address fields, and then you can see that a metric is generated, which shows the 80% of the addresses entered can be corrected. There are about 16% invalid records, and there is 3.65% of records which are really valid. And the invalid records, if we drill down, you can see that why the address is invalid. So there is no country identified for this record. Range is missing. The specific country is not available, right? And so on. So the system helps see what is wrong and helps us to look into fix it. Uniqueness of data. Again, this is about how many records are unique, and so we can find the uniqueness by looking into multiple columns into this. Typically in this example we have taken uniqueness by phone, customer name and email, which could form the unique customer record. And then the system says like out of this, there's like 91% unique, and there's like 8.676 which is non-unique. And you can see that it displays out the non-unique records and says the duplicate count. Each of these records is available twice, and it helps us look into those records and get them eliminated and fixed. So once the profiling is done, the results are given to the business and IT teams who define the business rules which we start implementing, right? And then so that's the process. So implementing the cleansing rules, where there's many cleansing you can do. If on each record, on each value, rules are defined, like in this case, searching and replace and fixing the records, trimming the spaces, blanks, quotes, non-printable characters. So there's many different transformations that we can build. And again, so this is only the process of building the cleansing rules. And when you define these rules, the business team is able to see, when I apply these rules, what is the result. So then you can look into the cleansing results and see like what was it before and what is it after, right? Like cities, Riverdale, Illinois, zip code given. And after the fix of the record, you can see that an address line is created. The Riverdale is standardized to a proper, single, the first one being the capitals and so on. Illinois region is the postcode is fixed. Context, and the rest of the records are also fixed asset. So it also gives a summary of how many valid and invalid records, and then you can still go on doing the cleansing process and fine-tuning your business rules. The second thing is data enrichment. For example, in this case, it takes the customer name, okay, and the person record, breaks it into the first and last name from what is supplied, and also assigns a gender. For example, here, the system looks into, by the name, it says, okay, it's a male, strong male name, male weak, and when you want to assign a gender to your records, we can fix. So there are more data enrichment options like this available, which will be taken care of. Once all these rules are defined according to the database that you're looking in, to the records you're looking in, we run the cleansing package. So the cleansing package processes the data, fills it up, and creates a totally new set of records, which is much more cleaner than what got before. We also define some custom cleansing rules to address things that are missing. So you can see as we proceed, a lot of these nulls are gone, and then the records are much cleaner as we look forward. Names are fixed properly, the phone numbers are standardized, zip codes are given, cities are alerted. So the record becomes cleaner as we do more processes. And so that involves depunctuation and capitalization, as you can see here. Deduplication, removal of all the records after the process. It's much easier to record all the duplicates. So again, duplicates are generated by combining a list of fields. So usually, like I said, name, email, etc. And in this case, firm name, house number, street code, and the records are cleared up. So what is a typical process in terms of implementing a solution like this? The question also comes, so if I were to do this DataOne solution, what is the effort that is from my side? Does my team need to be there? So from the customer side, there is equal participation, like in terms of giving access to the database and so on, validations at most points, profiling the results, and looking at it, defining the business rules. YASH does the heavy lifting in doing the entire process by building the cleansing packages and so on, data loading and cleansing, all the executions and so on. So there's an equal process, equal commitment in this project from both the teams to ensure this goes. And finally, talk about establishing the data governance option. Through the process, there is also a scorecard that is defined, which gives record by record. We set a standard, like I said, 95% is what we set as a standard end of the scores, and then that helps keep monitoring at every stage of the process how the quality of the data has improved. And finally, before the entire data loading is done, detailed validation is done by defining lookups against the target table, so no duplicates get into the target system. mandatory validations to look for mandate fields, formats checked for proper standards that have to be met, so final validation, and then the data can be loaded into any format into SAP or enterprise data warehouse or in the form of flat files. Here are some of the sample templates that we use, which we talked about the accelerators, which talks about the source systems, what kind of rules we bring in, and so on. And then here's a sample RASI chart to talk about what is the contribution from your team as well as YASH. Some more screenshots of the process and the tool screenshots. So finally, to summarize, what is the solution features? We are talking about a key problem, which is to improve the data quality in an existing environment, migration, ownership of data, defining a process around the data. What is the solution requirement? The ability to rate the quality of data with key parameters, cleansing of the data, loading into target systems, a process to continuously assess and see that there's an improvement in the process. So what is the requirement deliverable when you want to set something like this? Data quality scorecards, which helps us measure them, an ability to define the business rules for the business and IT to interact, establish a golden copy database, and define ongoing governance. So how do we do this as a solution? We start with a 2-week assessment where we put our data management architect who can sit with your IT and business teams, go through your systems. Typically, it's a 2-week assessment which helps us define the duration of what the project is to set the data quality and data governance, and we will tell you what it takes to implement DataOne. So to summarize, DataOne, it's a complete data management solution with our experience and the best practices. Based on industry best practices, and it's a fine-tuned method over years to ensure that the process is done on time and returns a good value. And finally, definitely the objective is always to give the clean and high quality data available, which can improve your organization from making critical decisions and also having the assurance the data is correct when decisions are made.